Hello everyone. In this video lesson I am going to present the Chapter 5, John Milton and His Time, from an outline of English literature in native sound. An outline of English literature, Chapter 5, John Milton and His Time. John Milton and His Time 1. John Milton L'Allegro and il Penseroso Comus on Shakespeare on his blindness, Lycidas Areopagitica, Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, Samson Agonists 2. Richard Lovelace to Althea, From Prison to Lucasta, On Going to the Wars 3. Sir John Suckling 4. Robert Herrick 5. Edmund Waller His Majesty's Escape 6. Sir John Denham Cooper's Hill 7. John Earl Microcosmography 8. Sir Thomas Browne Religio Medici 9. Isaac Walton Complete Angler. John Milton. Indisputably, John Milton is considered as one of the greatest poets in English literature. He is second only to Shakespeare. He was a highly learned man who had made a thorough study of the Bible at home during his childhood. After leaving the Cambridge, he studied at home in Horton, and was grateful to his father for allowing him to do this instead of preparing for a profession. He lived a pure life, believing that he had a great purpose to complete. He was a very ambitious man who wanted to write something extraordinary which would bring grandeur to his own country. In order to fulfill this great aim, he wrote Paradise Lost, which is comparable to almost all the great epics of classical writers. His works can be roughly divided into three groups. At first he wrote his shorter poems at Horton. Next he wrote mainly prose, then three greatest poems belong to the last group. First group, shorter poems. His shorter poems L'Allegro and il Penseroso 1632, are often considered together. The first poem, L'Allegro, means the happy man, where describes the joys of life in the country in spring season, and the feeling of walking in the field in the morning and listening music and reading books in the evening at home. In the second poem, Il Penseroso, the thoughtful man, he describes his study during the day and visit to a great church to listen splendid music in the evening time of autumn season. Milton wrote Comus 1634, Arcades 1633, and also wrote many sonnets and lyric poems. On Shakespeare and on his blindness are his famous sonnets. His autobiographical poem on his blindness has written after his blindness. Lycidas 1637 is a sorrowful pastoral on the death by drowning of Edward King, who had been a student with Milton at Cambridge. Second group, prose work. Milton's prose work belongs to his second group of his work. They are mainly concerned with church affairs, divorce and freedom. Most of them are violent in language and have neither literary value nor interest for modern readers. His argument on religion is not much influential, and on divorced sector, his thought is as personal as his marriage did not work, but on freedom he shows some marvelous skills. His best prose work is probably the Areopagitica 1644, a speech for the liberty of unlicensed printing. In this work Milton is pleading for the freedom of expression. This is good writing, and it contains little of the violent language than other creations. Calm reasoning and smooth words go together, and the style is fairly simple. In this work, he expresses his views on the importance of freedom, and it has taken a true and honest feeling up to now. The expression, "a good book is the precious lifeblood of a master spirit," and like this immortal lines can be found in his work. During the Second World War, he became minister and worked very hard to support the government through pamphlets, and his eyesight began to fail, and by 1651 he lost his sight completely. Third group, three greatest poems. After becoming blind, he created most famous of his creations. Milton's epic poem Paradise Lost 1667 is one of the greatest works in English literature. The main theme of the poem is men's disobedience of God and their fall from the heaven. He wanted to write King Arthur, but finally he chose the fall of the angels, the story of Adam and Eve, and their failure to keep God's command. He included the whole heaven and hell in the scene on this epic. The work was planned in 10 books but written in 12. The poem contains many remarkable ideas written in sweet musical verse. The scene is the whole universe, including heaven and hell. The poem is written in the great blank verse and ornamented by all the skill of master poet. Milton's style is known as the grand style, which has suggestive power. Sometimes some unfamiliar words and constructions have also been used. Milton wrote another great poem entitled Paradise Regained 1671. It is more severe but less splendid than his first epic poem. It is often taken as the second part of the Paradise Lost, as this poem has used the same name as previous one. Paradise Regained is connected by name to his earlier and more famous epic poem Paradise Lost, with which it shares similar theological themes. However, this effort deals primarily with the temptation of Christ. Milton composed Paradise Regained at his cottage in Buckinghamshire. Paradise Regained is 4 books long and comprises 2,065 lines. In contrast, Paradise Lost is 12 books long and comprises 10,565 lines. It has labeled the work a brief epic. Samson Agonistes is a tragedy on the Greek model. It describes the sorrowful days of a blind prisoner, Samson, who has been captured by the Philistines and made him blind, taking his eyes. Samson is blind among enemies, which is worse than chains. Some of the sorrowful expressions of Samson reflect Milton's own personal feelings. On the title page, Milton wrote that the piece was a dramatic poem, instead of it being a drama. He did not wish for it to be performed on stage, but thought that the text could still influence people. Richard Lovelace wrote to Althea, from prison, and to Lucasta, on going to the wars. Sir John Suckling was a famous scholar at court, and a light-hearted and often careless stoic. Robert Herrick was considered by the men of his own time to be the best living lyric poet. He writes well about the English country and its flowers. Edmund Waller wrote some of the earliest heroic couplets, a form of verse which was widely used in the next 150 years. In this meter, a couplet is a pair of lines, rhyming and of 5 iambic feet. He wrote His Majesty's Escape, 1625, in the meter. He also has been honored for inventing the heroic couplet. Sir John Denham wrote Cooper's Hill, 1642, and famous for describing countryside scenarios and his thought on various subjects. John Earl wrote a small book in prose, Microcosmography, 1628, which offered character studies of ordinary people. It is used in novel to describe the character, which became important for the next generation of the novel writer. Because novel was not born in this time yet, Sir Thomas Browne was a doctor and wrote in his difficult, learned and polished style on various subjects. He wrote Religio Medici, 1642, on religious matter and vulgar errors, which is his longest work. Isaac Walton wrote Complete Angler, 1653, presents the art of river fishing and the description of river scenario. Thank you for joining with me in this video lesson, and subscribe my channel to get my upcoming video lesson continuously. Keep suggesting us. See you soon.